What's going on, guys? My name is Jake, and welcome back to Gax Reviews. And today we're going to be talking about the second entry in the Haunting anthology series on Netflix, The Haunting of Bly Manor. But before we get started, I want you guys in that comment section below, have you seen The Haunting of Bly Manor yet? What are your thoughts on it, and are you looking forward to checking it out if you haven't seen it? And don't worry, this is a spoiler-free review. I'm going to be doing my best to tiptoe around those spoilers. Let's get started with this thing. The Haunting of Bly Manor. The story tells of a young governess hired by a man to look after his niece and nephew at the family country house after they fall into his care. Arriving at the Bly estate, she begins to see the apparitions that proceed to haunt the premises. Now, the Haunting of Bly Manor. We're going to be talking about Mike Flanagan first, and then I'm going to kind of try to move my way into this series. Because Mike Flanagan, if you guys have watched my videos before, I've talked about how much I think he is one of the best studio horror directors. And that's the difference between art directors to me, especially like the Ari Asters, the Robert Eggers. Those are those art, lower budgeted films that I love. But studio horror, the ones that get a bit more money, Mike Flanagan has excelled in that role. And whether it's from Hush, Oculus, Gerald's Game, Dr. Sleep, which I think is criminally underrated, to his masterpiece, which is The Haunting of Hill House. I have loved him for so long, and I'm so happy he's finally had more of a platform on Netflix to show how great he is. And just speaking on The Haunting of Hill House, that to me encompasses everything that I love about Mike Flanagan as a director. He is someone who focuses so much on the human aspects of these characters and puts his horror as a secondary character. So he presents horror in such different ways. And when you go into that show expecting this to be a cliched show with ghosts and possessions and someone died, what's going on, you ultimately get a really strong family drama with his horror as that background character. And I loved that about that. And I think that that's one of my favorite miniseries of all time. So I was cautiously optimistic coming into the sequel series, The Haunting of Bly Manor. Most of the creative factors around Hill House has returned. However, Mike Flanagan is not directing all of them. He only directs one episode in this. And interestingly, a lot of the cast from the original is also back. Victoria Pedretti, Oliver Jackson Cohen, Henry Thomas, Kate Segal, and Carla Gugino all return as part of the cast in the second series, but they portray different characters because this does not connect to The Haunting of Hill House. These are its two own separate stories. So I came into this kind of expecting more of the same from The Haunting of Hill House, and ultimately that's not what we got here. I got something that was so story focused, and the horror is there. Don't kid yourself. That horror is still there. It's just less prominent because this focuses more on not a ghost story, but a love story. And that might seem kind of like, what? You're probably thinking, what is that if you haven't seen this yet? This very much focuses on these love between these characters, and not just one love story, 3 love stories in general. And I'm not gonna touch about what characters or what love stories are happening, because ultimately this is a mystery, and you go through these episodes learning more about these characters, and not just the old characters that you get to know, well, the old portrayals that you get to know, but the new characters too. So the new cast, Rahul Kohli, my boy, I love this guy. I've loved him since iZombie, and he finally is getting more platform to show how great of an actor he is. He's just so effortlessly charming and lovable, and I loved him as Owen in this movie, or in this miniseries rather. He's tremendous in this thing. As well, Emily Eve, who's Jamie, she's really good in this, but Danila Miller as Hannah Gross is just chef's kiss. She's perfect in this thing, and has such a tragic story that I think mirrors a lot of Nell's from the first, and it's just tremendous seeing that happen. But again, coming down to that old cast that came back playing different characters, Victoria Pedretti, who had a minor role in the first one, plays the main character, and she's effortless in this thing, especially since she's had more time to shine with You of this year. She kills it in this thing, and she's my favorite performance in this. I think not just from a physical standpoint of her portrayal of the words that she's coming out of her mouth, but just the physical aspects of just the horror that you see her go through, and her character just slowly teetering as the episodes go later and later. She's literally phenomenal in this thing, and I can't give her enough praise. Oliver Jackson Cohen is terrifyingly brilliant. I'm not going to talk about too much of his character because that's where a lot of that intrigue comes around. And then you have some of the other characters. Carla Gugino is the narrator. Katie Segal is another character in the show. Henry Thomas is someone that I don't think they used enough of in this thing, and they did enough to capture his backstory, but I didn't love enough about him to fully connect as well as I did to these other stories. And ultimately, what this episode does, it goes episode by episode and gives you flashbacks, little bit of hints into what the mystery of this house is and the mystery between what's happened in the past and how that's affecting the present. And I think just ultimately all of this is just so masterfully told. Not just that, it leads down to being so heartfelt and heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. Those last couple episodes break your heart as it goes on. And I'm not one who normally gets teared up do TV and movies. That last episode got me. And I think that a lot of people who are just straight up comparing this to The Haunting of Hill House, you kind of need to go into this thinking this is its own thing, because that's what it is. This is an anthology show. It's going to have its own thing. The horror is there. It's very much present. The Lady in the Lake is terrifying. And the backstory, when they finally explore her backstory, is a good little ghost story in there too, and it's just so heartbreaking. And all of this, again, guys, Flanagan just knows how to mess with your emotions, and that's what he does, and ultimately delivers one of the most beautiful love stories I've seen in a long time, and one of my favorite love stories that I've seen, and one that I can't recommend enough this Halloween season. It's not your traditional horror show. It's not your traditional scares. It's not a lot of jump scares, which is good. I love that. I don't like jump scares. Thank you, Mike Flanagan. And while he doesn't direct everything, that tone is very consistent throughout the whole thing. And just learning about these characters, guys, I think The Haunting of Bly Manor is splendid. Perfectly splendid, as one of the characters might say. And I'm going to give The Haunting of Bly Manor a 9. Yeah, again, you kind of just have to not look at this as Hill House. And if you're just going to ask me which I like more, I like Hill House more because I just think that there's so much you can't top from that. But there's so much to love about Bly Manor, and ultimately, I think that this is just such a phenomenal sequel that I think is going to go under a lot of people's radar because that first one is so good. But I'm just happy that this show exists, guys. This is probably my favorite show of the year so far, which is just great to say. And I want you guys, again, in that comment section below, let me know what you thought of The Haunting of Bly Manor. Obviously, I'm kind of tiptoeing around a lot of things in this review. It might seem a little blunt at times because there's not much to talk about without getting into spoilers. So if you do want a spoiler review, let me know in that comment section below and I can make that happen. But that about wraps up for this video. If you guys did enjoy it, if you could hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. But other than that, I've been Jake, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.